just to kind of keep myself entertained. And I had wanted to do a vegan slow cooker book. And I had been putting out some of my recipes, and a publisher came to me because they had been looking for someone to write a vegan slow cooker cookbook. So like most things, I do everything backwards. And it works for me. So I had only had a blog for a couple of months, and then I had like 4 months to write 150 recipes.
Oh my gosh. For me, it's like if I do one recipe a month, that's plenty, but that's incredible. And it's interesting because back 14 years ago, people had no clue what a blog was. The internet really hadn't taken off like it is. You're listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage. We're here to plant seeds on compassion to animals, your health, and the environment, and topics related to business that align with all three of those areas. Enjoy the show. Well, today I am super, super excited because I'm going to pick the brain of an expert on slow cooking, an expert on the creamy, and an expert on the one that I'm super afraid of. I'm trying to think of what it's called, the Instapot.
Instapot?
Oh my gosh, I have yet to get an Instapot because I'm terrified. And so today's guest, Kathy Hester, is going to talk to me about, where that fear might come from and how to overcome it and why I should try an Instapot. So with that, Kathy, welcome to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.
Yay! I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's great. And our good friend Angela Fischetti is the one who introduced us. And, we were talking about her before we got started. I adore her, and she is she is the cat's meow. So with that in mind, let's start with a little background on you. How did you get involved in the whole plant-based vegan lifestyle, and how did you turn that into a business?
Sure. So I became vegetarian in 1983, which is a very long time ago, especially for people younger than me. They're like, what? I wasn't even born yet. But you didn't go to the regular grocery store and have tofu and tempeh and all of these options that we have now. And I did a lot of different jobs. I had a job that was boring. I got paid well. I had an office. So I started a blog, and that was about 14 years ago, just to kind of keep myself entertained. And I had wanted to do a vegan slow cooker book. And I had been putting out some of my recipes, and a publisher came to me because they had been looking for someone to write a vegan slow cooker cookbook. So like most things, I do everything backwards. And it works for me. So I had only had a blog for a couple of months, and then I had like 4 months to write 150 recipes.
Oh my gosh. For me, it's like if I do one recipe a month, that's plenty, but that's incredible. And it's interesting because back 14 years ago, people had no clue what a blog was. The internet really hadn't taken off like it is today. I remember the early days of blogging, and then we used to use Insta-teleseminar, and then we would, things have changed dramatically. So what I love about what you just said is that you started blogging and then a publisher came to you. And I work with authors, and it's amazing how many authors say, well, I just want to get discovered. It's like, well, what are you doing to get discovered? And they're not blogging. They're not posting. They're not doing anything. So I do want to put a pin in that and talk about it in a little bit. But what made you decide to go plant-based? What was, you were vegetarian, but what really took you from being vegetarian to where now it really is your life? You had a boring, very well-paying job, which a lot of people do. Not so much these days, but in the past, it used to be like that. So
Right.
What changed for you?
Well, I had a friend whose daughter had an allergy. Also, I'd had a blog before this first slow cooker blog, healthyslowcooking.com, which exists today and has more than just slow cooker recipes on it. But I had had a blog before that, and people kept asking me to veganize the recipes. And it was so easy. So I was like, of course I can veganize this. And then I was like, at that point, there was a vegetarian slow cooker cookbook, but there were no vegan slow cooker cookbooks. So I started in the beginning to try and help other people. I knew why I should stop eating dairy and eggs. And it was just kind of, I was in that process. And so as I wrote the cookbook, I just became vegan because I already knew the answers to making things vegan easily so I
Mhm.
could still have everything that I want. In fact, doesn't look super pretty right now, but I was eating some nacho cheese. I have a nacho cheese powder recipe I just made. So I put 2 tablespoons of a powder, a little bit of water, and put it in the microwave for three
And it's a
minutes.
vegan nacho cheese. I want to
Oh,
clarify that for
absolutely.
people.
Everything
Yeah,
I do is,
it's so funny because when you say to somebody, "Oh yeah, I just had cheese nachos," and they're going, "But I thought you were vegan," it's like they're trying to get you a gotcha. But
yeah. Oh,
you know,
no, 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 no. This is made, the base is oats. In fact, so this is whole
interesting.
food plant-based, no oil.
Well, I want to take a step back on, you said you knew why you were quitting dairy and milk and eggs and all that. But for the people listening, a lot of people really don't get that. They, when you say you're vegan, they go, yeah, but you can have cheese. It's like, no, I don't do any animal byproducts at all. And why is it important for people to give up dairy and cheese and eggs and all of that? And of course, cheese is dairy, but what's your reasoning for it?
I can tell you what my reasoning is, and then I will also kind of say that one thing I don't try to do is like try to convince people that they should
Mhm.
think the way I do, because there's a lot of different reasons that people could do this. And I'm totally okay if it's not my reason. So there
Okay.
are environmental reasons, which aren't exactly my reasons. It's a byproduct. I'm happy it helps the environment by me not eating meat, dealing with dairy, eggs, all that stuff. And in my community, I have some vegans, but I also have plant-based people. And so
Okay.
if anybody's new, you might think, well, those are the same thing. And there are similar things, but like a vegan is going to be doing it for ethical reasons. And that's why I went vegetarian, was for ethical reasons. So it was really easy for me to continue on that road a little further. In 1983, while I've met some people who were vegan then, it wasn't really talked about much.
Right.
So just going vegetarian, I kind of think in 1983, going vegetarian was kind of like going whole food plant-based SOS is now. It was hard to get anything out. You had to cook at home. That changed a lot over the late 80s and early 90s. So, but at that point, and then with plant-based people, they are whole food plant-based is really what it is. Plant-based is often used as a marketing term in different ways, which confuses people. And in fact, even the beef industry will say you can be plant-based and still eat meat because that's how they're defining it. So just realize when you see something plant-based, make sure you read the ingredients. Right now, 99% of the time you'll be great, but
Right.
just check. Whole food plant-based, which is what I'm always going to mean when I say plant-based. People come to that, usually they're a little bit older, they have a health issue, and they're looking to food to help heal them. And oftentimes they find giving up meat, poultry, dairy, eggs, all of those things can help them heal some of their diseases. So if you're talking to a plant-based person and you're trying to tell them why they should do this ethically, it's not going to resonate the same way.
Right.
Just like if
Right.
I talk to a vegan and go, "Oh, you really shouldn't have that Impossible Burger," which I would never do, by the way. And because it's not my business what other people are eating. It's also not my business who they're dating. And I kind of think of it the same way. So what I try to do,
Oh, I make that my business. I want to know who, no.
well, I do want to know all of it, but I'm not going to tell you who to date,
Well,
but
then
you
I'm
got
going
to
to
tell me
blog
all
about
the
it. It's like,
right? All the gossip. I'm like, I'm almost 60. I'm not dating. You tell me all about it. This will be
yeah,
so
there
much
you go.
fun.
There you go.
But I
It's funny
find,
because I
oh,
just today saw a post about, how do people date after the age of 60? And I've been in a 35-year relationship and I wouldn't have a clue. And I turned 70 in May. And it's like, I would have no clue whatsoever. And I think I would forget that I'm actually 70. And it's like, I would still think that I'm in my 30s. It's like, oh, it'd be just a weird situation. But so, okay. So with the plant-based, I love what you said about, when you're talking to a plant-based person, telling them about the environment and compassionate animals may not be the fit. They may be more concerned about health and well-being and all that. Where a vegan, many vegans don't care about the health side of things, which, it's interesting because I think for me, I try to get the combination of the two. And I do what I can to educate people. And sometimes I do get a little in your face, and I have to be reminded that that doesn't always work as well as just saying, here's what your options are. So speaking of options, let's talk about, you've written several books. How many books have you written?
I think 12,
Yeah. Okay. After like 10, you forget, it's like, I don't
maybe.
know, quite a few. Now, are those all published by the same publisher, or have you self-published? And what's the story behind that?
I've published with two traditional publishers,
Okay.
and then I have one, two, three, four, getting ready to do my fifth self-published book. So like I have like a Halloween book, which has more vegan stuff
Wow.
in. It's super fun.
Okay.
I'm big on Halloween and spooky stuff. Like that's my fun thing. I published with Page Street Publishing last and Fairwinds Press. They were smaller presses, but they did really well. So like this is the last paperback book. It's
Why
gluten
don't you
free.
read the title for those people who might be listening instead of watching?
Absolutely gluten-free vegan cooking in your Instant Pot. And don't be scared just because it says gluten-free. So you guys don't, if you don't know me, I'm kind of the queen of options. So even in my non-gluten-free books, they're gluten-free options. So in the beginning of those, it says, hey, if you want to make this gluten-free, do use one of these gluten-free flour blends instead of whole wheat pastry flour. The beginning of this one, I say, hey, if you don't want to be gluten-free, use whole wheat pastry flour, right?
So
So
you
everyone
you
goes,
provide lots of options. So I love it.
well, yeah, usually there's like soy-free options, gluten-free options, nut-free options, sugar-free options. Everything is oil-free options as well.
Okay.
And I do salt-free options. So I do some salt substitutes.
Wonderful.
But so all of my books look a little bit like this, which is to say that they're full color photos for
It's
every
beautiful.
recipe. Thank you. I did the photography in a lot of them, and the later ones for sure. This is one of the ones I did. Um, and then I'm holding up two of the Ninja Creami cookbooks that I have, and I sent you one of those.
You did,
And
and I can't wait until well, I'm sure there's recipes in there for winter, but I got a creamy a couple of years ago as a gift. My wife got me one, and because my neighbor, I'm working in my yard, my neighbor comes over and she goes, "Here, try this," and it's this beautiful looking sorbet, and I'm like, "Is it vegan?" She goes, "Kathleen, I know you well enough to know that it has to be vegan." Okay, so that was like first question. So I ate it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So she took me into her house, showed me her creamy, and I'm like, oh, I have to get one of these. So of course I mentioned it to Karen, and next thing I know, I have a creamy, and I love it. I love it. So I'm going to definitely use your book.
oh, and so I kind of did the same sort of thing. Now, it's not a paperback book, it's a PDF, but like what I'm showing now is I actually printed out on my home printer, double-sided. You take it to Staples, they'll put a cover on it and spiral bound it for
Sweet.
$5. So it's much cheaper for my community to buy it this way, and it's environmentally friendly. So you
I
can,
love that.
you know, um, but yeah, there's all kinds of things. Like this is my pumpkin spice ice cream because again, I love Halloween, so it's got a fun Halloween photo.
I
My
love
favorite
that.
photo.
So Kathy, I'm curious. Okay, we know that you are really skilled with the creamy. We know that you're really skilled with the Instapot, the slow cooker. What are the different machines and devices in your kitchen that you really enjoy using? And you could actually say, okay, I am an expert at using this.
Oh, well, a lot of things. I'm a milk maker expert. And that's one of the, what happens is I get excited I'm trying to pick something out for me and the information out there isn't good, which is what happened with milk makers. So I contacted a bunch of people, got them sent. I have an article where I keep adding to it as I try different machines, but I probably tried about 10 different ones to help people decide what questions they need to answer to know which one is right for you. I make soy milk. Maybe you're allergic to soy, then you don't need a milk maker with heat, so I kind of break it down so we can get to this point. But like I
Right.
have Instant Pot slow cookers, I have blenders, I have a Breville air fryer. I've done an air fryer book as well, so I've used other kinds of air fryers. I'm also really good. The book that I'm working on now is called Potions and Powders. And maybe I may get split into 2 volumes, but like one of the things I just showed you was actually nacho cheese powder. And I also made a mole powder that you can reconstitute. So you don't have to put it in the freezer. You don't have to, just like mixes maybe you might have had in the
Hmm.
80s or the
Hmm.
70s, right? You're only not full of 7,000 things you would like to
Right.
not put in your body. So like for this, because I made an oat, like a not from a box mac and cheese sauce for an oat book that I did. So I did outrageous oatmeals with lots of different things with that. And so now I've got gravy mixes and all different kinds of stuff. So I think it's important to have a really good blender and or like a small blender.
Okay, let's talk about that because my I have a blender that I'm sort of happy with, and I've been thinking of getting the Vitamix for somebody who might be on a budget because we have all sorts of audience members. We have people that have unlimited income; they can buy whatever they want, and then we have a lot of people who are truly on a limited income. Maybe they're on Social Security, they're past the age of 65, and they do live on a limited budget. So what are some tools that if somebody wants to start building a nice library of devices for their kitchen, what would be the first three that really you would recommend to people start with if they want to start cooking the way that you're explaining?
I think you will find yourself pretty happy if you have a blender like
Okay.
that, and it's a lower entry point. Also, I want to just mention if you go to Amazon, it used to be Amazon Warehouse if you're on your computer, not your
Hmm.
phone, on the drop down, like where it says books and all that. But now, oftentimes, so if you went and looked up an Instant Pot,
Okay.
if you see the regular price on the right hand side and you scroll down a little bit, it might say used, and it'll tell you what kind of, and a lot of those that are used are smashed boxes. You're going to find tons of those after the holidays. So I've gotten things half price that were in a smashed box, and maybe they have a dent.
So
And you can send it
they've never
back.
really been used. They just have
Oh, yeah.
a
Now they
little
could
dent on the
have
box.
been, but in general, like I do that a lot. I had gotten
Wow.
Breville food processors are quite expensive. They're really great. That doesn't mean you have to have one, but my first one that I got was half price that way. I was like, oh, okay, instead of paying $500, I'll pay $250. Okay, I can try that. So that's one place. Another place that's often overlooked is going to local thrift stores because people get things for presents. Like people get Ninja Creamies and then they don't use their Ninja Creami
Right.
and they give it away. Hopefully, I'm going to stop that from happening to you.
That's a great tip. That's actually because it can get pretty pricey when you buy all these devices. And I actually had a food processor, a little mini food processor, had no idea how to use it. And it had been sitting on my shelf for quite a while. And, I would dust it off. And I had some friends over for a get together. And this one friend who's vegan, she said, do you ever use that? And I said, no, I don't know how. She showed me how to use it. It was so simple. It was just like the first time I had to use Google Docs, I was intimidated by it. Now I use them all the time. But quite seriously, I get intimidated by technology, believe it or not. I'm a digital marketer, but
Everybody does. So
okay. So I'm
everybody
not alone on
does.
that.
You
Okay.
are not alone. And anyone who's like, well, all my friends use the Instant Pot, I can tell you what, all your friends were hemming and hawing about it. They bought it, they waited a long time, and they were a little scared too. And me, when I got my first Instant Pot, I'm like, I don't know how to use this. So And I don't, it's funny, I don't always enjoy learning something new. I enjoy once I figured it out. So
I
I'm,
can tell. I can tell. So I'm curious, Kathy. Okay, with the Instapot, I think where my fear comes from is pressure cookers. I remember back in the day that, the horror stories you would hear about somebody, the lid would blow off and somebody would get burned. And I think that's where my fear and my phobia comes from. Is that justified, or have I made that up to be something that it really isn't?
when we were growing up, that was justified for
Okay.
stovetop pressure cookers. The safety is so much better now. And then when you go to an electric pressure cooker, the safety measures are even stronger.
Okay.
So the only time I even came close to having an episode, I was doing something I will never tell anyone what I was doing because you shouldn't be doing it. And everything was fine.
Okay, now
So
I want to know. Okay, I won't.
I
Okay, my
don't
mind
want you
was
to
just
try this at
wandering on that one.
home. Is the only, but I think as long as you keep this, there's a seal and you make sure the seal is working
Mhm.
well,
Okay.
it's not going to explode the same way. Also, there's safety measures in place that you have to release the pressure before the lid will even open.
Okay.
So all of those things make it a little, once you know those, it makes it a little safer. Like I remember when I was first reading about it, I'm like, it's like a whole other language, natural pressure release or quick pressure release or manual, I'm like, what? And all it is do you just go away and let it come down naturally, or do you want to stop it? And the recipe will tell you
Okay.
to do.
Okay. All right.
Um, and the only thing to know is that you're always going to need to add water to bring it up to pressure. It's the water that does it. So one of the
Oh,
things that
okay.
I do, I also have another blog called plantbasedinstantpot.com. That's all Instant Pot recipes. They're all whole food plant-based. And I make an infused maple syrup, like a spice infused maple syrup, which
Hmm.
is so good on pancakes and coffee and stuff. But so I because I'm cheap, I'm going to put that maple syrup in a jar because I'm not losing one drop of it. I'm going to put my my
Like the
little
pancake inside the jar. It's like,
right, exactly. Like now, if you could see on either side, I have buckets of spatulas. Like I'm the
right, right.
spatula lady. And so what you do is you sit that in the Instant Pot, put a little water around it, put it on, and it comes up to pressure. And what it does is it helps infuse those. The pressure makes it cook faster.
Hmm.
And it's just, you can do it on the stove. Obviously anything you make in your Instant Pot, you could make on the stove in a longer way, but the reason to use it is that it's a little faster. Once you start using it, you can make almost anything in it. So let's say I'm like, I'm too tired to cook. I don't want to cook. I'm doing all the whining, like we all do at some point or another. I can throw jarred vegan spaghetti sauce. I even gluten-free pasta like chickpea pasta in there
Hmm.
and a little bit of water, and it will make my instant dinner
Wow.
without me stirring it, without me being so I could start that and I could either go read a book, I could take a walk, I could do a chore. And I love the Instant Pots and the slow cookers for the fact that you do some stuff and then you have time away. And I think that can be really helpful for people who feel like they're too busy to cook or
Right, right.
who just have a lot going on, like in different parts of your life, like if you have kids or if you don't have as much energy, maybe seasonal affective disorders getting you a little bit. And there's just a multitude of reasons why you might want to have some extra time or space around that.
Right.
And I think that's really important. And like things, if you just have one thing that you get first, I would get probably a slow cooker or an Instant Pot. If you can chop things, and if you can't, you can buy them pre-chopped if you have maybe some wrist issues or mobility
Hmm.
issues.
Hmm.
I love having a blender. I do also like I have an immersion blender that has like a little baby food processor on it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I got it at Costco for like $30. And so Costco often will be a good place to get things at a discount. They had Ninja Creamies cheaper than anywhere else this past summer. Also, a tip about Costco, if you get your Instant Pot or if you decide to get a Vitamix or a Blend Tack and a very expensive appliance, like we have an Opal Nugget ice maker. Like that's one of my two, like, you really don't need this appliance, but it's just my thing. Like I drink ice drinks all year long, but
Okay.
it of course broke right after the warranty. Well, I bought it at Costco. They gave me all my money back, and then I just ordered a new one. There
Wow.
is no time limit on those things. They've actually replaced my Vitamix before for
Oh,
they'll refund
Vitamix
your
is amazing. Yeah.
right, but Costco's warranty is just perfection. People bring back Christmas trees after Christmas, which I think is a little crappy,
That's that's pushing the line a little bit.
but they
It's
take them.
interesting.
I
Costco's
don't
kind
do
of
it.
dangerous to me because I go in and I say, okay, I'm not going to go overboard, and I go overboard. So I don't even have a membership there anymore. I did for a while, and it was like, oh, this is ending up costing. I'm buying things I don't really need, but that was pre-vegan, pre-plant based, and so I'd buy a bunch of junk. So I just want to remind people that you are listening to the Plant Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, and I'm here with Kathy Hester, who is the queen of appliances in the kitchen. And, Kathy, I want to get back to the three things that people should
Okay.
have that would really help them to have better meals. Let's come from the perspective of somebody who really doesn't have a lot of time to spend in the kitchen, really isn't that passionate about it. But one of the things I learned is once I started cooking plant-based, I really enjoyed it because prior to that, old marriage, long time ago, we're talking a long time ago. And no matter what I cooked, my ex-husband was not happy with it. It was never good enough. And I worked a full-time job. So I got this phobia around cooking, which was like, not doing it. And then when I started doing plant-based, I love cooking because it's an expression of love is the way I view it. So we've got the blender. Now, what's a decent brand or a good brand for blender if somebody's on a budget? And then, if they really want to go crazy, they can get a top of the line Vitamix. You can pay what, $1,000 for it. So
Usually
let's
you
talk.
can get them about 500, which is still quite expensive for a
Yeah.
single appliance. Like the chop and dice Breville food processor I have, I think is about 550.
Wow.
But I got it on sale. And don't forget Black Friday.
You are the queen of sales. I mean,
Oh, yes, I
you're the
am.
queen of a lot of things. You are a queen. Okay. Okay. So we've got a blender. What's an
Okay.
inexpensive, good
An
brand blender?
inexpensive one, you could do like a NutriBullet or a Ninja. I
Okay.
have gone through several Ninjas. So usually because of what I do, I try to get some, when I see an inexpensive appliance that looks pretty good, and an inexpensive blender is still probably going to cost you about $80 if
Okay.
you buy it somewhere, but you might be able to get a used return one. Another thing, if you go to qvc.com,
Okay.
type in as dash is, like as is, they will have things that they've used on the shows. I have never gotten anything that had food on it, although I've read reviews that they have. Like I got something, and then we got something for Cheryl's mom. So that's another way to get things about half price.
Okay.
I love the Beast blender. And
The
for those of you
Beast blender. I've never heard of that.
it's just a little guy, and it's almost the same wattage as a KitchenAid, and it has like these little jars,
Oh, okay.
and it even has some tiny jars. So
Nice.
at Costco last year, again, I make no money for
I was
Costco,
going
but
to say, are you like getting an affiliate commission from Costco for doing this?
I wish. So Costco, if you're hearing this, please come talk to me. I've got
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
these are usually about $200.
Mhm.
But they were clearancing them out, which Costco often does. So they were $79. They were cheaper than a Ninja, as strong as a Vitamix, and had 3 containers.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've got the blender. What's the other two items that we absolutely should have in a kitchen in order to just do decent meals? I don't know that I would ever get to your level of the way you cook and the passion you have around it. I mean, I get excited, but you get really excited, which I love because then you can teach all of us.
It's the creativity thing. So I get a thing and I'm like, ooh, let me do that.
Right,
I
right.
would say you would need either, if you're making a very beginner kitchen, I would say get an Instant Pot or a slow cooker. You, you can make almost all the same things in either one. And when I got my Instant Pot, people were like, oh, so you're not going to use your slow cooker anymore. And I'm like, of course I'm going to use my slow cooker.
Right, right.
And I tell people to kind of look at what your day looks like. So if you're a person that wakes up and you are just foggy in the morning and you're just lucky to get out the door, but you come home and you've got a good 20 minutes in you for the kitchen,
Hmm.
the Instant Pot's perfect for you.
Okay.
If you come home and you can barely say your name, but you can give me 15 minutes in the morning and maybe 5 minutes the night before to cut it, you can cut everything up, throw it in your slow cooker, turn it on and have it ready to go. So that's
I love
how
it.
I would tell you that. Now, at home, sometimes if I want a last minute thing, I'll just make it in the Instant Pot. If I'm sitting here and I know we're going to have a hard day, I will go ahead and start throwing together a super stew, putting on high. And then by the time I come and like what happens is that I'm overtired. I don't want to make anything. And we're like, yeah, we can go out again. Or, oh, we'll eat something that's less optimal than what we really want.
Hmm.
But I could have a beautiful super stew. So I think that would do it. I'm trying to think of what would be a third thing. I mean,
Well,
if you're
so
doing,
far I'm on a target because I do have my blender. I do have my slow cooker, which I love, love, love. And what I most love about a slow cooker is I start something in the morning and then I let it cook all day long. And so the aroma, and so when Karen comes home from work, she's a park ranger. And so she's outside, and on cold days, when she comes home and there's a
oh,
soup cooking or something, yeah, I've hit a home run. I got some brownie points on that.
that's awesome. And there's, especially at this time of the year when it's kind of chilly,
Hmm.
it's wonderful. Like, and chili is one of my favorite foods. I like chili on a potato, chili over
Good
rice,
segue. Good
chili
segue.
and, all the chili stuff. And you can make a chili in either one of those. Like, let's say I call a lot of meals cheater meals, not as in cheating on your diet, but like
Hmm.
it feels like you didn't really cook. So like I have a cheater chili from my very first book, which really is 3 cans of beans, a can of corn, and a can of tomatoes, and about 5 spices. So if you see a recipe and you're new, don't be nervous if it lists a lot of spices.
Right.
And also for bargain spices, like to maybe that way, I would say the third important thing would not be an appliance, but would be willingness to get some spices in there. And you can buy spice blends in the beginning. You could get Italian spice blend and chili. I call it chili for the stew powder because the chili powder has cumin and onion and about 10 different ingredients. Garam masala, which is an Indian spice blend. Don't get McCormick's because it's just turmeric, but get, a nicer one if you're lucky and you live where there's some ethnic markets, like
Hmm.
a Hispanic market or an Indian market, you're going to get cheap spices. So it's not going to, don't, grocery stores, like main grocery stores like Kroger's, Harris Teeter, Wegmans, those spices are often marked up 1,000%. It's the most expensive
Wow.
thing you can buy in the grocery store. But if you go somewhere like Sprouts, some Whole Foods now, your local co-ops, or in Canada, they seem to have bulk stores. You can buy a tablespoon of a spice. So if you're like, well, I don't want to spend $10 on
Right.
cardamom because I've never had it at the store, go to one of those. Because I was lucky, I used to live across the street in New Orleans from a place that had bulk spices. So I'd try a new recipe and I'd literally spend like $1 to try it. And then I'd be like, yeah, I don't like that. Or, oh
Right.
my
Right.
gosh, that was the best. I'm going to go get more of that. And so having spices changes everything from, yeah, that's okay. And even if you're making something new, and one of the things with the slow cooker and the Instant Pot that are very important. So either way, I leave all the spices that I used out and then I taste it before I would serve it. And then you add things until they pop again, right? Because everybody does that on the stovetop.
Right,
But
right.
people think they shouldn't do it here, but like the pressure will dull some of the spices, and the long cooking time will dull some of the spices.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. Good to know. So,
Yeah,
okay, we've got a blender, either a slow cooker or an Instapot. What's the third one?
that people have to.
A must have to really be able to do some fun stuff with vegan cooking and plant-based cooking.
So another thing that can be really helpful is having a food processor. Those can be really inexpensive or very expensive. Like I have one of the most expensive ones. Um, like a lot of things like blenders and other appliances, it has to do with the motor. Even with milk makers, I look at the motor, right? And that's why a Vitamix costs more than a Ninja, is that the motor is significantly stronger. And in fact, there is a Vitamix where you can get a food processor that goes with it as well. So I've seen that, and I have my friend Chef Julia loves hers. I love the Breville because I got the one that has the dice and
Mhm,
peel stuff, and that's part of. So literally, I can take the skins off of a big Costco bag of onions
mhm.
and go clump, 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 clump in about 5 or 10 minutes. It's all done, and I put them in the freezer and use them as I need.
That's incredible. Now, how many different devices and appliances and countertop items are you the owner of?
Oh, good Lord, I could not possibly tell
I think
you.
we should have a contest and have people take a guess, and then whoever
Well,
wins.
when I did the vegan slow cooker book, I had 30 slow cookers at one point.
Oh my goodness! Oh,
But I
my
think I'm down to
animal!
like 4 or 5. So I like what happens
Wow!
is I'll try a lot of things and then I give some away as well. So
Right.
like with milk makers, I've probably given 5 milk makers away, and I still probably have 5 or 6 milk
That's
makers.
incredible. Now, Kathy, how do people find you? What's the best web address to find you at? And I know you're on Instagram. Are you on TikTok?
A little bit. I dabble
Okay.
on Instagram and TikTok.
Okay.
I'm Kathy Hester Cooks on Instagram. And I think I'm Kathy Hester Vegan Recipes on YouTube, because you can watch. So I will make stuff and link to the recipes on the blogs a lot of
Okay.
times. And we do lives, and we have a great community there. But if you just look up Kathy Hester, I'm the one
Perfect.
that'll show up at this point. But healthyslowcooking.com, I have tons of recipes that you can go and get for free. Same thing with
Excellent.
plant-based Instant Pot. My YouTube channel has a lot of free information as well. I do sell my books and courses, and I have a membership, Kathy's Cooking Club. And we do 2 live classes every month, and those are about 2 to 3 hour classes. And we do anywhere from 4 to 8 recipes, depending like powders.
Wow.
We do, yeah, no, there's no breaks, but you
Okay,
don't
and
have to.
we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. Now, where would people go to join your membership program?
I sent you a link. So there is a
Okay.
special link that if you look at that, that would be helpful. Um,
Okay.
And then when you join Kathy's Cooking Club, you get access to all the past cooking classes, and there are over
Perfect.
150 of them.
I want to make sure that we put all that in the show notes because I love what you're doing and I
Thank
just
you.
love your creativity because seriously, if we had to go head to head on creativity with cooking, I would be far, far, far behind because to me it's like I've got about 7 or 8 recipes that work, but I know that one of the challenges people deal with, and I've dealt with this because we're in a split household. We're not 100% vegan in my household. I am, Karen's not. She is more now than in the past, but one of the things that I know would make a difference is if I keep a good variety, hearty meals, because she works really hard, and so those hearty meals are really important and flavorful. Because what I might think is flavorful, she may not. So, how do you help people to get through that hurdle that many of us deal with?
Oh, that's really interesting too. So Cheryl, my wife, has been vegan since 2019, and she
Mhm.
was a meat eater before then. So she's one of the people that Impossible Burgers got her over the hump. Like that worked for her. And
Mhm.
so that's also why I would never tell somebody you can't have this and you
Right.
can't do that, because I think everyone has their own path. but having some of her favorites. So she used to be like, well, I really want chicken parmesan. I'm like, I can totally do that for you. Like, and again, when I'm saying like cheater meals, you can get Jardin chicken fillets out of the freezer and use some store-bought mozzarella that's vegan, all
Mhm.
those things. It's quite an easy thing to do. Now I've made my own chicken nuggets with leftover soy milk pulp. So I mean, you can do it either. There's no right way. There's what works for you.
Okay. Okay.
And I want to encourage everyone who maybe doesn't feel confident. I'm self-taught. So anything I do, you can do. And in my classes, a lot of times I recipe develop in the class to show people how I make decisions if something's, am I going to put more spices? How do I decide if I don't know what this is going to be like? So
Right.
like this nacho cheese I made up in class on Saturday. So
What's in the nacho cheese?
we've got oats, we've got nutritional yeast, we've got a little bit of lactic acid, which sounds like it's not vegan, but it is vegan. It's from sugar beets. That's what
Okay.
I put in all my cheeses. You can get it on Amazon. Um, it's got jalapeno powder. It's probably got some guajillo powder or ancho chili powder, onion powder, garlic powder,
Wow.
some dry mustard. I mean, nothing. The lactic acid's a little weird. Jalapeno powder, maybe. Like you could put regular chili for the stew powder. I just go and get the dried chilies.
Okay.
I take the seeds and ribs out. I put them in my Breville on dehydrate, and I just grind them. So it's the best, cheapest Christmas present you can ever get anyone because it's beautiful, and you can get them at Walmart and some jars.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So
I love it.
thinking of it that way, that even though like that sounds so complicated, well, I made a big jar of it. I'm going to make it maybe once a month.
Right.
So even if you're intimidated by measuring out that many things, and another thing, I keep all the things I'm going to use on this side of the bowl and put them on this side of the bowl after I use them.
Okay. Okay. Now,
Because I'm 59 and a half. I don't always remember what I
okay.
just did.
Once you get past 60, you don't do that half anymore. Trust me. So a question I saw on your website, you had creamy corn chowder, I think it was. Tell me about that. That looks so good. And it's like, okay, I've got to try that recipe.
Oh, and it's so easy. I'll have to try and I do so many recipes sometimes. So since I put the corn chowder up, I've probably developed about 30 recipes.
That's incredible.
But in general, you can make a corn chowder really easily. So chop up some potatoes. You can peel them or not. Live your best life. Whatever you want. You want little pieces, you want big pieces. I'm team rustic. So if it's not going in my Breville dicer, it's going to look rustic. And I'm just beyond team rustic. It's good. That you pay big money in restaurants for people to chop your potatoes unevenly, right? When you go to the fancy restaurants.
Right, right.
Okay, and you need a bag of frozen corn. I may have put in some pepper, so I have about 4 or 5 different chowder recipes, but I would use a little nutritional yeast to give it a little bit of cheesy kind of flavor.
Okay.
And when I'm saying a little bit, I'm really meaning like a tablespoon or two. You don't
Oh, okay.
always,
So you're talking a little bit because to me, a little bit is like a cup. Okay. That's a
and
little
there,
bit.
you can always do more. So
Okay.
like, and a lot of things like that, and I believe in that one too. I will skip sauteing onions, and this comes from being in a slow cooker because people get mad when you ask them to saute onions. I've done
Right,
that
right.
before. But use onion powder instead. Use garlic powder instead.
Okay.
Because I
Okay.
think a lot of people think, ooh, it's powdered. It must therefore be chemicals. It's cut up onion that was dehydrated and blended up. That's it. So it's completely whole food plant-based to use. You don't have to store it. And on days that I don't want to saute anything, that's what I use. That's what's in all my dry mixes. I often use like thyme. You can use fresh thyme if you have a garden.
Hmm.
And if you
Hmm.
don't, dried thyme works just as well. And with the corn chowder, especially, I will take an immersion blender. If you don't have an immersion blender and you just have a small blender, you could just scoop out about a cup and a half of the soup, blend it, with the potatoes and the corn, that's going to turn it into a creamy base
Okay.
without anything else. But if that's not creamy enough, I like to have it a little creamy and then chunky.
Right.
Sometimes with stews, I will actually just take the back of a wooden spoon and smash the potatoes
Uh-huh.
if it's not quite thick enough, because that's a little easier in an Instant Pot or a slow cooker than trying to find something to put it on the stove to reduce it. So you really just turn it up high on whatever the saute or simmer settings are, and just smash a couple of potatoes. Also, if you put a little bit of nutritional yeast, that will often thicken it. But you could even put in some potato flakes if you have some instant potato flakes somewhere, and that will also thicken it if it's too thin. Um, but then having that, and then you could go ahead, and I like to add or either serve, if I'm being fancy, I'll serve it with like a dollop of unsweetened yogurt that
Right.
people can stir in like a borscht kind of feeling. Like, I don't know why I like that, but I do. Or you could just put a little bit of non-dairy milk in there, especially something like a non-dairy oat or soy milk. It's going to
Right.
be thicker. And if you're new to kind of trying plant-based dairy, I find that oat and soy are closer to like what a whole milk would be.
Okay.
And maybe rice milk is kind of like a skim milk. So if you try one milk and you're like, and actually, this is how I got into, you can see where I describe things so many different ways. It's like everybody has their favorite and it may not be mine. And so
Right.
I try to give all these options, but like, so you can have, if you were a skim milk fan, you will find the milk for you, or you'll just use more water if you're making something else. So there's so many ways to do this where it's going to work for you.
I
And
love it. I
I
love
want
it.
everybody's food to be best for their family and to think of my recipes as a jumping off point.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that because it is important that everybody in the household enjoy the meals, because if one person does and the other one doesn't, especially if you're the main cooker and you want to have no meat in the house. I mean, that's a big issue with us. It's like Karen will barbecue outside and we have an agreement. It's like, okay, let's keep the meat outside. And so she has a lot of respect for where I'm coming from.
Oh,
And
that's good.
it's really about conversations too. So speaking of which, I really appreciate this conversation we've been having, Kathy. And as we wrap this up and wind down, what are your final thoughts for people?
I just want you to really enjoy your food, enjoy making it, enjoying eating it. Just have a good time with it. Don't make it this big, scary monster thing. And I had chips and nacho cheese, and I have written a bunch of cookbooks. It's okay to have a simple meal. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's nothing wrong with kind of saying, especially if you have a non-vegan partner and
Hmm.
they're like, I'm craving meatloaf. Well, that's a great time to make lentil loaf, right? There's a lot of things that can still hit that spot. So, and if you're someone who's kind of trying to go along that path of giving up something that you used to really love, it's okay to have a substitute. Some people, when they first start doing things, maybe want to have Impossible Burgers. And what's interesting is to see as people do this, now Cheryl prefers black bean burgers.
Hmm.
And it's okay to let this be your own journey. And if you're new to cooking and you're scared you're going to mess up, let me tell you this. So I've made thousands of recipes from scratch. And I think I've only thrown two things out ever, ever. Because if you're making something and you're scared it's going to be inedible, just realize it's probably not going to be inedible. You may
Hmm.
have to fix it, and it'll be just as good as that mediocre pasta and jarred sauce, right? Just try to
Absolutely.
add some more seasonings, be brave. And one way you can be brave, so let's say this is a soup and let's say this is a spice, some weird spice I don't know about. Smell them both. Smell the
Hmm.
spice, smell the stew.
Hmm.
You have an internal chef, basically, who will either go, that's disgusting, or wow, I didn't think those would go together. And that's how often because I make a lot of different spice blends and do things like that. And if you can learn to trust yourself on that one thing and start there,
Mhm.
you're going to be shocked at how creative and adventurous you can be in your own kitchen.
I love it. I love it. Well, Kathy, this has been delightful. And again, give your web address if you would.
Absolutely. HealthySlowCooking.com and PlantBasedInstantPot.com.
Excellent. And again, we'll make sure that's in the show notes. And I want to thank everybody who's tuned in to either listen or watch. And I encourage you, please leave a rating and a review, subscribe to this channel wherever you may be consuming this episode. And this is Kathleen Gage, host of Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I've been speaking with Kathy Hester, and this has been delightful. And I encourage everybody, go out, experiment with your meals, and think in terms of compassion. That is very important to me. That's part of my mission, is raising awareness around compassion to animals, compassion to the environment, and compassion to your health. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode. You've been listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, inviting you to subscribe to this channel wherever you're listening or watching the show. And please let your friends know about the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. Live healthy.